Hey guys, does your truck seem like it's missing something? Well, we've got what it's missing. We're going to show you how to get in the zone and get your truck lifted with zone lift kits. As you can see here, our zone 6.5-inch front and rear lift kit comes with everything you need to get your truck up into that lifted zone. So what you want to do when you get your kit, lay out everything, and then inside your instruction sheet, there's a parts list. I'd recommend that you go through, check off all the parts on the parts list, make sure you have everything before you start on the project. Because everybody knows it's a really bad thing to get halfway done with a lift kit and be missing something important. So very important to do that, make sure everything's here. And the next step is to get this truck up in the air and start putting on this kit. So let's get the wheels off so we can get to the real heart of the lift kit. The next thing we're going to do after we get the wheels off is we're going to disconnect our brake line bracket from the differential right here. So we got that loose. Is unclip our ABS line from our frame rail. Do our emergency brake bracket on the driver's side. And we're also going to remove this one up here. Take our shocks off. And hang on to the bolts because we'll need those to put the new shocks on. There's also one more up the top we have to take loose. Unfortunately, that one doesn't have a nut on the back side. It's built right onto the bracket, so we don't have to worry about trying to hang on to that. Once our shocks are off, then we're going to pull our U-bolts off. Now, when you get to this point, it's very important that if you're doing this up in the air, you have some kind of a jack like we have up underneath the differential here. And we'll take these off, because the only thing that we're going to be reusing here is this bottom plate that goes up under here. The U-bolts and the nuts, you can do whatever you want with them, throw them away, throw them in a box, keep them, whatever you want to do. All right guys, once we have the U-bolt off, what we're going to do now is we're going to slowly let this down so that we can remove that factory block from out of there and be able to put our new block in. About as far as we want to go, because we don't want to put too much pressure on our ABS line here. So we'll take that new block out, let's wipe this off a little bit, clean it up. At this time, if we were going to be putting an add-a-leaf kit on this truck, which is also available from Zone, we would do that now. As you can see here, our add-a-leaf kit from Zone Off-Road Products comes with everything you need to put this on your truck. And the nice thing about this is that if you're hauling a heavy camper or a trailer of some sort, and you know how most of the time you put that on the back of your truck wants to really squat down hard. Well, what this is going to do, this is going to help keep that a little bit more level, and it will increase the rear lift on the truck by about an inch, inch and a half, depending on the truck and depending on how much settling there is when you're not loaded. So what we got here is we have everything to get it on the truck. We have our add-a-leafs, we have our spring clamps, and we also have our center pin bolts and also our aluminum shim plates. So next thing we're going to do is start putting this on the truck. The next thing we're going to do after we get the wheels off is we're going to disconnect our brake line bracket from the differential right here. So we got that loose. Next thing we're going to do is unclip our ABS line from our frame rail. Do our emergency brake bracket on the driver's side. And we're also going to remove this one up here. Take our shocks off. And hang on to the bolts because We'll need those to put the new shocks on. There's also one more up the top we have to take loose. Unfortunately, that one doesn't have a nut on the back side. It's built right onto the bracket, so we don't have to worry about trying to hang on to that. Once our shocks are off, then we're going to pull our U-bolts off. Now, when you get to this point, it's very important that if you're doing this up in the air, you have some kind of a jack like we have up underneath the differential here. And we'll take these off. All right, guys, once we have the U-bolt off, what we're going to do now is we're going to slowly let this down so that we can remove that factory block about as far as we want to go, because we don't want to put too much pressure on our ABS line here. So we'll take that new block out, just wipe this off a little bit, clean it up. Once we got our block out of the way, the next thing we're going to do is take a couple C-clamps, and we want to crank these down on either side of our center pin. And if you're wondering what the center pin is, that would be this pin right here. It runs all the way through to the top. What we're going to do is we're going to remove that center pin, but we don't want these leaves to come flinging apart when we do that, because one, it's dangerous, and two, it could damage them. Okay, once we have that clamped down, we're going to pull this center pin out of here. We're taking this nut off up here at the top, and then we may have to drive it out, but we'll see what happens when we get the nut off. Okay, and as you guys can see, we have the nut off, but the pin's not coming out, which means we'll have to drive that out of there. So don't worry about damaging the center pin, because we're not going to be reusing it anyway, so should be okay. There we go. We got that out. Now what we're going to do, once we have that loose, is we're going to slowly release these clamps, because we need to get our add leaf in here, and we're not going to be able to do that with these clamps on here. So, and it's important when we release these to keep these things in line and not to release them too fast that they go springing all over the place. You keep everything nice and in order here too, because you want to make sure that you put everything back exactly the way it came out. When you get this apart, you may notice on some applications there may be this pin that's sticking up here. What you can do with this is, it's just a roll pin. Just pull this leaf down out of here and drive that roll pin out. What that is that's a lineup pin. It goes into the bottom of this other leaf, but we need to put our add leaf here in the middle, and our add leaf doesn't have the spot for the roll pin. Once we got that roll pin out of there, what I want to do is I'm going to pull this bottom leaf out, and then what we're going to do with this is we're just going to lay it down here on the floor, and we're going to take our add leaf and our add leaf shim and our centering bolt, and we're just going to put this together and make sure that when we do this, we actually get this into the correct hole, because remember, we had the one where we took the roll pin out of, and we don't want to put this back in that hole, because that just won't work. Okay, and once we have this piece together, then we'll set this back up into the truck. We'll slide this up in here, we'll get this down in there. And then what we want to do is lift this middle spring up, get it back up on top of here. And then just make sure everything is lined up properly here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift this rear end back up until that leaf touches up there. Once we have our stuff back together, we put our plate back on top, our nut on our centering bolt. Then what we're going to do here is we're going to use our clamps and pull our springs back together, because you don't want to actually pull these together using this nut and bolt, because it could damage it, strip the threads or something like that. All All right, now what we're going to do here, guys, is just snug this with our wrench. Use our torque wrench, and we're going to torque this center nut down to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, that's 30 foot-pounds. So once we have that, then what we're going to do is we're going to let this rear end back down a bit. At this point, then we can go ahead and remove our C-clamps. Once that's all together and torqued, let us down, we can remove our clamps. And then what we're going to do, at this point, that will complete the installation of our add-a-leaf kit for this side. When we get ready to put our rear mounting block back in, what we want to do is take a look at this. You can see on the top how the hole is offset to one side or the other. And if you flip this block over, you can see the pin is the same way, but it's offset the other direction. What we want to do is this pin goes down when we put it back up here on the axle, and we want to make sure that we set this so that this pin is actually to the forward of the truck. So we're going to put that in there now. And then we just line it up right down in the hole, and then we're going to bring our differential back up. Now then, this is the part that gets a little tricky here, guys, is to line in our spring back up with our pin. But what we're going to do first is we're going to get our U-bolts, and we're going to get our top plate and get all that loosely attached here, so that way once we get this pulled over into place, we can crank that down so it'll stay in place. We're going to go ahead and get our U-bolts up in place here. And then once these are in place, we can kind of jockey things around here a little bit. And that'll help us to actually pull our spring over where it's supposed to go. Allow us to get it locked into place a little better. Once we have that on there, then we can take our lower plate and get our lower plate started in here. So once we have this plate on here and started, what we're going to do is we're going to leave these somewhat loose, but we want to snug them down enough that we have thread all the way through the nut so that we don't strip anything off. That'll keep everything nice and together in the meantime while we're doing the other side. We've got our lift block and our new U-bolts and our add-a-leaf all in the driver's side now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these bump stops, because obviously with the new lift, these aren't going to have any effect anymore. So we have spacers that come with the lift kit. So we're going to remove these and install the spacers. We'll take our factory bump stop and we'll use our new hex head bolts. And what we're going to do is put the bolt through our factory bump stop, drop it in like that. And then we're going to take the Loctite, that's this little tube that comes with your kit, and we want to put some Loctite on these bolts. And the reason why we want to do that is just so that these don't fall back off at some time. So, and you don't have to put it over the whole thing, just a line right down the center is more than sufficient. And then we're going to put that back through there, and then we'll take this over and we'll put it back up on the truck. Once you have that up in there, then what we're going to do is we're going to torque this new setup to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, there we go. We've got that on there and torqued to 35 foot-pounds. We'll go ahead and take the one off the other side and do the same thing. We've got our new bump stops and stuff on. So the next thing we're going to do is prep our shocks. And what we need to do is we need to put our bushings and our spacers in the ends of the shocks. The best way to do that is to grab yourself some grease or some petroleum jelly and just put a little bit of that around the end of the rubber piece here that we're going to slide into there. Push that down in. Well, even with that grease or petroleum or what have you on there, you know, these are still going to be kind of stiff to get in here. That's normal. You want them to be, because you don't want them to pop right out. So put a little bit of grease or something on our spacer and then just push it right in, just like so. Do the other one and we'll get these installed in the truck. Once we've got our bushings and our spacers in, next thing we're going to do is reattach these into the truck. And you want to make sure that when you put these in, It's a good idea to leave this strap on till you get the top one bolted on and you get ready to put the bottom one in, because these are going to be really stiff and hard to push back up if you have to push them up. Also, make sure that when you look at your shock, you can see the shaft part. Make sure that's to the bottom and not to the top. So where we get this up in here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave these shocks hand tight until I get them bolted on the tops and bottoms. We'll go over and start the top one on the other side here. Now we're going to put it on to the bottom, and what I suggest is you have bolts standing by so you can grab it right away. Your side cuts, go ahead and cut the strap that's holding this on, and then as that shock starts to come out of there, get ready to slide your bolt in. And we get lucky on this one because the rear axle is actually a little bit lower than the shock, which is great because that means that we don't have to fight this in like sometimes you might have to. And depending on how low you have this rear differential down or up, you know, you may have to do a little fighting there. But we got lucky and had ours low enough we don't have to do that. And we'll get the nut started on it, and then we'll go over and do the bottom on the other side. And hopefully we'll get just as lucky with the other side too. Okay guys, I think when I leave the shop here today, I think I'm going to stop and buy a lottery ticket because I got really lucky on these shocks. Didn't have to fight either side, so that's awesome. What we're going to do now then is we're going to go ahead and tighten these up, and we'll tighten up the top one up here first. And then we'll do the other side. Okay, there you go. We got our shocks on. Now we can go ahead and move on to the next phase of getting this all back together under here. What we want to do is we want to take, after we've got our shocks on, take this 3-inch flat bracket and the bolt that goes with it. This bolt, just so you know where it's at, it's in the same package as the bolts we used for our bump stops. Because what this is this is our extender for this, so that we can extend this out and still hold it tight so that it's not just flopping around back here in the back of the truck. We're going to take our bolt that we took back out of our differential bracket back here. We're going to reattach that, and that's going to hold our new bracket in place. Once we have that on there, we're going to tighten this down. Get a wrench and a socket and tighten this down. Once we have our brake line bracket on, then we can take our ABS cables and reattach those into these clips down here on the bottom. This part is not going to be able to go back in here, but I'm just going to put the cable in there, and so that way it helps to hold the cable out of the way of stuff. Okay guys, we're going to put our brake cable hangers back on. Now, the one thing that you might notice when you go to do that is that this bottom one is going to have to be removed. This one back in here. We'll tighten those up here in just a second, and that'll keep our brake lines out of the our emergency brake lines out of the way. So that's it. Once we get this tightened down, then we can we're going to do the front one, but if we were just doing the back here, at this point we'd put the tires back on, let it down, and then torque everything, tighten everything, make sure everything's free and clear and not binding, and give the rear end a little bounce. Okay guys, we've got the rear lift all installed on the truck. The only thing left to do back there is to torque everything down, which we're going to do that once we get the truck back down on the ground and get everything settled in. So we're going to go ahead and start on the front lift, and what we need to do first is get these wheels off. Once we've got the wheels off, got the truck down here to a more manageable level, what we're going to do is we're going to start taking stuff off in here, starting with our ABS line. We want to disconnect that and get that out of the way here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off our bracket right here. And then we're going to unclip the clip in the back. which is this clip right here. Now, these clips are kind of tricky to kind of get unclipped sometimes because of the way they're made, make it a little difficult. We're gonna disconnect this bracket that holds our brake line from our upper control arm. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to put this bolt right back in here so we know where it goes. And then I want to take this loose up here. We've got all of our brake stuff disconnected. Now we're going to take our splash guard down. Next thing we're going to do is take our tie rod ends loose and take the nuts off of both sides of them here. Okay, unfortunately that didn't work on this one, so we're going to get something called a pickle fork. And since we've got this out already, we'll just hit the other side. Next thing we're going to do is take our brake calipers off, and we're just going to take the bolts out that hold the bracket and take the whole thing off because the bracket's got to come off anyway. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to get some straps and we're going to tie this up out of the way because it's very important that we don't let this hang by our brake hose because it will damage the brake hose. So once we've got all that stuff, our brake calipers and everything out of the way, our tie rod ends off, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this nut off of the end of our axle shaft. Now, on some applications there may be a dust cap on here. If there is, all you got to do is take a screwdriver or a flat chisel and a hammer and gently tap around it until you get it to come loose and then pop it off, and that'll give you access to this nut. So we're going to get this off, and then we're going to get the one off the other side as well. Okay, now what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to take this nut and I'm going to run this nut back down on here just to the end of the threads, and I'll explain to you why here in just a second. Okay, the reason why I'm doing that is because we're going to have to remove this axle shaft from the truck when we get to that part. But what we may need to do is tap on the end of this with a hammer to knock this axle loose out of here. So we want to have that nut on there so that way we don't mess up the threads on the end of our axle shaft. Next thing we're going to do is, as you can see here, I've went ahead and removed the rotors just to get them out of my way, give me a little bit more working area in here. Plus, when I get ready to start taking stuff apart here, to lighten this up quite a bit. But the next thing we're going to do is take these link pins loose. And they may be stuck a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run them out of here. We'll take the one off the other side, and then that'll loosen this up where we can move this and get this out. Okay, guys, as you can see here, what I was talking about, I took the one off on the other side, and this one just fell right out of there. Next thing we're going to do is take our sway bar out by removing the two bolts here on both sides. What I've done is I've put our jack up underneath this just so this thing doesn't come dropping down and slam onto the floor. You know, you can put anything you want under, a couple jack stands, whatever, get a buddy to help you hold one side or something. But we're just going to do it this way and pull these bolts out of here. Now make sure that you save all this stuff because you may need to reuse it. And once we have all of our bolts out, then we can go ahead and pull our sway bar down out of here. We'll just let this jack down. It's not that it's real heavy or anything. It's just that it's kind of awkward to kind of hold on to and try to get the bolts out of it at the same time. I mean, you can see here it's pretty light. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark our struts for the driver's and passenger side so that we know when we take them out which place to put them back in. And then we're going to pull our lower strut bolts, which are these bolts right here, bolt through underneath this side. Once we have this lower control arm supported, then we'll go ahead and pull our lower strut retaining bolts out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark our axles for driver's and passenger side. Then we're going to remove our flange bolts. Now, the flange bolts you don't have to worry so much about, guys, because these are not going to be reused. But just hang on to them just in case anyway. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen up our lower and our upper control arm bolts for our steering knuckle. So we're going to go ahead and get these loose. Now what we're going to do, because we don't want this thing just to come crashing down on us, we're going to screw this back on here a little bit. Then we'll go ahead and get the top one loose. The top one takes a little bit more work, simply because you can't get a socket in there to get to it, so you're going to have to wrench it off. All right, and then we're going to leave that one on there just a little bit as well, because we need to break these loose to get them off of there. What we'll do is we're going to try and hit these with a hammer and see if we can knock them loose. If not, we'll have to revert to the pickle fork again. Okay, that one came loose, so that's pretty awesome. All right, there we go. We got it loose. So we can take those nuts the rest of the way off and pull that steering knuckle off of there. Okay, once that safety clip's out, you just push down on this little lever right here, and then this just pulls right apart. And then what I do is just wrap it up around here so that way it's not in the way. And then we're going to take this nut the rest of the way off here. Now guys, kind of be ready for this because this steering knuckle is going to come down with this. All right, now it's all loose. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this nut off the end of our axle shaft here. Slide that off there. And there we have it. All this is loose and out of the way. Our wheel bearing and hub assembly is here. So what we're going to eventually do is we're going to eventually need to take this off of here by removing these bolts back here and separating this so that we can put this shield and our wheel bearing hub assembly onto our new steering knuckles. So we're going to keep this over here to the side so that way we got it handy so we can put that all back together when we get to that point. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop these little caps off here that hold the wire loom on up here. And the reason why we're going to do this is because we need to get to these nuts on top of our strut tower to remove our strut out of the truck here. So gotta get these out of the way. Once those are off, then we can take those nuts off of there. Once we get those nuts off the top, we can just take our strut and we can just pull it right out through the bottom here. The next thing we're going to do is remove our lower control arms. And the way we do that is just simply by removing the lower control arm mounting bolts up in this area here. Okay, once the bolts are out, we'll just pull that out of there. And we'll lay this off to the side. Next thing we're going to do is remove our cross member pieces here by removing these 4 bolts. And neither these bolts nor The cross members will be reused in our installations, so you can do whatever you want with those once they're off. Now to finish removing our cross member, we'll go ahead and take these 4 bolts out here that hold it up in there, and this cross member and these bolts are not going to be reused either. So we're going to go ahead now and mark our drive line just so that we have something to line up on when we put it back. And we're going to mark it there and just on here so that we know this is the one that lines up with this. And the reason why you do that is because these drive shafts are balanced, so you want to make sure that you put them back in the way you take them out to maintain the balance so you don't get a vibration in the front of the truck when it's going down the road in 4-wheel drive and whatnot. Now, in order for us to install our new cross member that's going to go in here and also to drop everything down, what we're going to have to do at this point is our control arm pocket here. We're going to need to cut part of it off, and that's going to allow us to do 2 things. One, it will aid in getting this front differential out of here, which we're going to have to take out, and also putting everything back together. What we want to do is we want to come out here and we want to mark 3.5 inches in here. Okay, so we're going to put a mark here, another mark right here, and we're going to go up to the top up here, and guess another mark, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, then what we're going to do is we're actually going to draw a vertical line on here so that we can follow that line to cut this off. A couple of things that you should know. The best way to cut this off is with a reciprocating saw, which would be like a Sawzall. We've got all of our safety gear on here, you see. Our safety goggles, our gloves, all that stuff. You want to make sure that you protect your eyes because you're going to have some metal flying and you don't want metal splinters and stuff in your fingers either. So we're ready. We've got it all marked out, and so we're ready to start cutting this out of here so that we can proceed with our lift kit install. Okay guys, we've got that cut off and out of the way. I'm going to take a burring tool and I'm going to clean this up just a little bit because I'll show you later on here, and we're going to have a guest come in and help us out with this, but we're going to have a plate that we're going to weld over this when we put this all back together. So I want to get that cleaned up and ready to do that. Okay guys, next thing we're going to do is unplug our actuator. This is the actuator for the 4-wheel drive, and it'll have one of those connector clips on it. You have to pop that out of there in some fashion so that you can get this to come loose, and we just have to push down on the button and get something under there to pop it out. It's kind of tight quarters, and then we want to pull this loose from up here where it's attached up there, and get that off there so we can get ready to pull this differential down. There is actually, I believe there's one more clip that holds this wire loom on to this differential, but we're not going to be able to get to that until we start bringing this differential down where we can get to it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the breather tube, which is right over here, and if you guys look right up in here, you can see the breather tube right here, and this is the breather tube. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pull that off of there, and it's just a rubber hose that attaches to a metal stub that comes up out of the differential, I'm just going to pull that off and just leave it hang there. And there you go. That's what it looks like when it's off. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull this front differential down out of here. And the way we're going to do that is, of course, we want to put a jack up underneath this to hold it. And then we got 2 bolts over here on this side that we're going to be pulling out. And then 2 more over here on this side. Unfortunately, one of these bolts over here on this side is a wrench-only bolt because it's up behind the power steering control motor. So you're going to have to get up here with a wrench and turn this thing out by hand. All right, now that we've got our bolts out, we're going to go ahead and get our differential down and out of the truck here. But we're going to have to kind of work it around some things here and there. Most notably, this drive unit for the power steering. One right here in this spot. We need to pull it loose. And then there's also another one around back over here on this side. Now that we've got this differential out of here, we're going to have to make some modifications on it. One of those modifications is we're going to have to cut this ear off on this end of the differential. This is the end that goes the passenger side end. And the reason for that is, as I was telling you before, once we put our lift kit brackets and stuff up in here, this is going to be in the way, so we have to cut this off. Now that we've got this out, you can see here I've marked it out where we're going to be cutting this ear off of here. Now it's essential that when we cut this, we don't cut into this housing, so you have to do some pretty precise cutting here. And what I would suggest, and what I'm going to do with this one when I cut it, is I'm going to cut just to the side of the line, basically leave the line behind, and then we'll take another tool that we have and we'll smooth it down with that. We've got it drawn out, now we're ready to start cutting. Okay guys, you can see here we've got this cut off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a grinder and we're going to smooth all this out. You can see here we've got our flange cut off. We've got this all smoothed out. Looks pretty good, almost like it never was there. And so we're good there. Now what we need to do is we need to come over on this side and we need to take a little bit off of this side over here, and I'll show you how to measure that out and mark it so we can cut a little off there as well. What we're going to do is our center bolt slot here in the flange, you can see right here. What we want to do is take our tape measure and we want to measure from the center of this slot, which is approximately right about here. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure out 1 inch and mark it. We'll do the same thing over here, it's just so we got a guideline to go by. And also on this side as well. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut this off and then get this all cleaned up and looking good like we did on the other side over here. So here we go. You can see here we've got this side cut off now, all cleaned up. I'm going to take the hard, sharp edges off. You can put a little bit of rounded stuff on there just so that way it's not sharp. You don't cut yourself on it, or neither does anybody else if they ever have to perform maintenance on here. So we got this all prepped ready. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach a bracket that start getting this thing ready to hang back up in here. And also we've got a little bit of welding to do. Now that we've got our mounting brackets on the end here all prepped and ready to go, the next thing we want to do is install the center bracket for the hanger. It's going to go on here just like so. Now the easiest way to do this is to have this differential turned upside down, and that way you'll know where this goes, because this goes on the bottom part. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove these 4 bolts right here, and we're going to be replacing them with these bolts and washers with a little bit of Loctite on the threads. and these also will get torqued as well. Now these bolts, you can find these and the washers in bolt pack 446. So let's get this apart, and be very careful not to crack the gasket seal on here or anything. If it does, I put a rag underneath here just in case it wants to seep some of the differential grease out or differential oil out. Okay, now I just wanted to run that back down to stop this from leaking down here. But what we want to do is not tighten those up because these are going to need to be torqued. We've got the bolts started, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our torque wrench and we're going to torque these to 33 foot-pounds. There you go. Now we've got this part ready. The next step is that we're going to be welding a plate back onto that lower control arm pocket that we cut off the back of. So that's what we're going to be doing next. And we're going to have a special guest come in and do some welding for us on that because he's a much better welder than yours truly. We got Shannon with us today. He's going to do some welding on our project truck here. And what we have to do is we have to weld this plate in over where we cut out our pocket. Now what we're going to do is this corner is going to face the front out this way. And when we put this plate on, we want to line this plate up even with flush with the bottom of the pocket, and then let it stick out on the sides a little bit. And then we're going to tack weld it first, and then we're going to completely weld by welding a complete weld on the inside top and on the outside on the sides. Do not weld on the inside sides because then it will interfere with the mount going up in there and it'll cause a lot of problems. So on the sides, outside, top, inside, should be good to go. So I'm going to turn this over to Shannon and let him weld this in there for us. So here you go, Shannon.
Thanks, John.
Okay guys, what we've done is we've went ahead and tack welded this up in place. It's a good idea that when you tack weld it, to go ahead and grab your crossbar that's going to go in here, and the one that fits in here is the one with the narrower bar, and just kind of set it up in there in place, make sure nothing's going to interfere with it. Once you know everything's good, then you can go ahead and fully weld both sides and across the top, and we're going to get Shannon back in here to do that for us. So there you go. Take a look at the tack weld, and then when we're all done, we'll show you it completely welded. There you go. You can see now, thanks to our good friend Shannon, that we've got our plate welded up in here. You can see a nice weld on the outside edges on both sides. And then up in here across the top, we have a nice even bead across the top to attach it and seal that up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wait for this to cool down, and then we want to paint all of this black so that it doesn't rust up on us and stuff. But we don't want to go spraying anything on this with it hot because it could actually combust and we could have a really big fire, time to break out the marshmallow sticks and all kinds of fun. So we're going to give this some time to cool down, paint it up, let it dry, and then we'll start putting stuff together under here. We've got our plate welded on the other side. Now before we can start mounting stuff up underneath here, what we want to do is we got to cut off a little bit of this flange on here so that way when we put our differential back in, the plate doesn't bang against the side here, which would not be good. So we're going to cut a little bit off each side of here and make sure that we got this trimmed up so that way it doesn't cause us any problems. We've taken a little bit off of this side of our bracket here, and the way you figure out how much to take off is you want to measure from the inside out, and you want it to be about 3/8 inches from here to the outside. And so measure out 3/8 of an inch from the outside, mark it off, and that should take care of it. We're going to take our grinder and grind this up a little bit just to kind of feather this out, and then we'll repaint all this raw metal so that it doesn't rust. Now we're going to go and do the one over on the other side. Got everything all cut off and made look nice again and painted up. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to install our differential drop brackets. And this is the one for the driver's side. As you can see here, you got your holes for your bolts and this little cutout that goes over this stub that sticks down up here. And you're going to reuse the factory bolts that we took out, and we're going to put it up on here like this. Now, the easiest way to remember is there's two different brackets, one for each side. The one on this side is the bigger one. And also when you put it on, if you look at this, with it sitting level, this side is taller. The taller side goes towards the front of the truck. So we'll just get this up on here and get it started. We've got that started up there, so we're just going to tighten that up and then do the other side. Now we're going to install the one on the passenger side. This one's pretty easy because you can see the cutout here is designed to go around our electronics and our gearbox for our steering. So we're just going to put this one up on here. And then we're going to do the same as we did on the other side and use the factory nuts that we took off of this side to install this part. What we're going to do is we're going to take our short bolts that we had out of our kit that we opened up earlier, our bolt pack, and we're going to install these. The shorter ones go here on the driver's side. We're going to put these down here through. And I have to move it around just a little bit to get it lined up here, but once we get it lined up and everything in place and our bolts, get them to drop in. And okay, we get that one down in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put a washer on there and then start our nut on this side. Now when we're doing this, you don't want to tighten anything up yet until we've got everything in place. The passenger side, we've got this bigger 5/8 bolt. Now if you notice, we've got two different washers. You can see here that they're way different thicknesses. The thicker washer is the one that's going to go on the underside here, and the thin one will be the one we put in from up here at the top. I'm just going to push that down through, push that up a little bit, and put our thicker of our two washers on there, and get our nut started on here. The next thing we're going to do now is we're going to hook our breather tube up, and what you'll have to do is there's some clips and things that go up through there. You may have to get in the top from the engine compartment to get some of those loose, and then you should be able just to pull it down. And then what I do is I just take a side cut or a razor knife or something, or even a scissor, and just cut about 1/4 inch off the end of this tube, so that way when you reattach it, it's tighter. Otherwise, you know, from where it's been on here for a while, it swells, it doesn't want to go back on real well. So the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to hook our wiring back up for our 4-wheel drive actuator. So we'll come around over here on the other side and we'll do that. We'll put our clip back in up here on the top to hold it. And then we have our other clip that goes in here that we'll put it back on as well. It clips in right here. Put that back on, bring our actuator wire around and simply plug it back in. The next thing we're going to do then is we're going to hook our front driveline back up. Now remember the marks we put on here so that we could remember the orientation of this. So we're going to line that back up the way we took it off from. So we'll go back in here like so. The same position that it came out. Next thing we're going to do then is we're going to install our cross member that goes on here. Next thing we're going to do is install our rear cross member, and if you look on this cross member, you can see this tube is narrower than on the other one, so we know that this is the one for the back side. And we want to make sure when we install it, you can see this flange up here, this is what's going to hold our center bracket on our differential. So we want to make sure we get that going the right direction as well. And then our bolts, we're going to put our bolts in from the front of the truck to the rear, so we can put them in this way. So let's get this up here. Beyond help. we'll go ahead and install our nuts on those and get those ready to go. Once again, we're going to leave this stuff loose. We don't want to tighten anything up until we get everything in place, because like you say, it's seen there, we may have to move stuff around a little bit to get it in place. So we got the rear one on, so now we're going to go ahead and install our front cross member, and kind of basically the same general way as we did the rear one. And once again, our bolts go from the front through to the back. And then we want to get our center piece in line. Put our one on the other side here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 9/16" by 4 bolts, and we're going to put those in the center bracket and put our washer and our nut on the other side. Get that started. And then we're going to do the same thing back here on the back one. Install our lower control arms. You can find the bolts in bolt pack 621. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set it up in here. And the 5-inch one will be the one that goes back here in the back. And then the 4-inch one is the one for the front. Just like so. And then we'll attach our washers and nuts to that, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. At this point, we can go ahead and go back through and tighten up all of our bolts, except for the control arm bolts. We want to leave those loose so that we can spin these back and forth freely, because we still have to attach stuff to the ends of these. And what we're going to do next now is once we have those all tightened up, which we do, we're going to go ahead and attach our support strut here. And you can see the holes across here. Well, this is going to go out here on this side. And then we're going to bolt it on right back here. And then we're going to tighten that down, and then we're going to attach our skid plate as well. Okay, also one thing that I forgot to mention to you is to put a little Loctite on these bolts as well as the ones we're going to use in the skid plate. So do that. We'll get the skid plate up there next. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put our skid plate up on here. Just run that up there a little bit and let it hang there for a second. Grab the other bolts here. That one started. Then we'll come back here. We'll get this one back here started. And now, if you guys notice when you're putting these on, that the holes in the skid plate itself are slotted, and that's so you can kind of adjust this thing and get it in the right spot. So before we tighten everything up, we're going to make sure that we've got it in the right place. Okay guys, we've got that on there. We've got everything prepped on our truck now. Everything's tightened up. Our plates and stuff are on. So the next step we're going to do here is we're going to install our strut extenders, and that's these blocks right here. Now it's just a matter of putting these on, and if you remember before I was telling you that these things are offset, so these will only fit one way. If you try to go put them on some other way, they won't actually fit. So it's pretty tough to not get them on correctly. So we'll put those on there, and then we'll use the factory nuts that we took off our struts when we removed them from the truck, and we're going to put those back on here to hold the extender onto the top of the strut. We have these tightened up, so we'll go ahead and we'll break out our handy dandy torque wrench and torque those down and have this ready to go back on the truck. I'm going to go ahead and snug these other ones up real quick first though. We've got our extender onto the top of our strut. We've got our factory nuts put back on here to hold this extender on, torque to 30 foot-pounds. And the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to take our nuts and washers that come in. They come in the bolt kit 629, and we're going to put these back up in here in the truck. Okay, once I got one of them started, I can go ahead and let that go and start the other two up in there, and then we'll tighten them all up. We're ready to attach our strut back to our lower control arm. If you've noticed, we've removed this control arm back off the truck, and I'll explain to you the reason why. The mount on the bottom of your strut is set, it's metal inside a rubber bushing that's in here, and in order to get these things to turn, because with the everything being lowered, you got a different angle here where you got to get your bolts in. If you've already tried this, you'll notice that it doesn't line up, and these are very difficult to get this bar to turn in here to the correct angle. So one way you can do it is to go ahead and remove the lower control arm, put the lower control arm on here first, and then push the back of it back up into the slots. And you can do that if you're working on this on the floor of your shop. You can do that with a floor jack. We've got a hoist in here with the truck lifted up, so we've got a transmission jack that we're using, but regular floor jack will work just the same. So I'm going to show you how to go about doing that, and it'll make this go a little bit easier for you. So we're just going to hold it up in there and get our bolts started. And then we're going to grab our wrench, tighten our bolts up. Move our floor jack into place. And then we're going to use it to slowly push our control arm back up into the spot where it's supposed to go. So just go ahead and just tap that in. We'll put our washer on it and start our nut back on the end. And then we'll get the one on the other side. And then we can let this down. And there we go. So that's a lot quicker, easier way to get this back up in here than to try and fighting with this mount on the bottom of this strut. So there you go, guys. Just shared a trick of the trade with you. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take apart our old hub assembly and steering knuckle, remove these 3 bolts in the back. And then that will allow us to remove our factory steering knuckle. The next thing we're going to need to do is remove all of this, because this plate, we're going to have to cut this plate down a little bit in order for it to work with our new hub assembly and our new lift kit on our truck. So mark down 1/2 inch on this side. Give us 1/2 inch right there. And then we want to take a straight edge and we want to go all the way across to the tip up here on this spot. Just like so. And then that's where we're going to cut this piece off at, is right across there. Okay, there we go, guys. That piece is all cut and ready to attach to the new hub assembly. So we're ready to start attaching stuff back together here. So we're going to get this back up in here where it goes. And we're going to take our steering knuckle and we're going to reattach it. Take our original factory bolts, a little Loctite on them. Okay, we've got those tightened down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take those and we're going to torque those bolts to 133 foot-pounds, and then we'll know it's good and tight. We won't have to worry about anything falling apart. Okay guys, what we're going to do is we put a jack stand up underneath the lower control arm and then let the weight of the truck down onto the jack stand so that it will actually push our lower control arm up, compress our spring and shock, and allow us to be able to get our upper control arm ball joint into the top of our steering knuckle and be able to get our nut started on that part. So it's just another one of those little tricks of the trade there for you. Go ahead and raise the truck back up and tighten those down. Now we've got our steering knuckle on and our control arms attached to it and everything. Next thing we're going to do is put our axle back in, and we're just going to put it up in here. Okay, and once we have it up in there, just lay it up in there. Put our washer back on the front out here. Reattach our nut. And then we're going to tighten this all down. Once we get this done, then we're going to put our spacer in here, because as you guys can see back here now, there's a gap. The guys at Zone already planned on that, and we have this to go in there to take up that space. Okay guys, there you go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the bolts that came with our kit, and we're going to use those to attach our CV axle back to that flange. Put a little Loctite on these bolts before we put them in. Next step of our process here of getting our lift kit on our truck is to remove the tie rod end, because what we need to do is we're going to need to cut some off of the outer and also some off of the inner tie rod. So what we're going to do, and the easiest way to do that is to just, like as you can see here, take your tie rod, stick it into the slot on the knuckle where it goes to hold it in place, and then take your wrench, and then you can actually take the wrench and you can break the nut loose. That it's called a jam nut. It's what holds it in place so it doesn't spin when it's on the truck. So once you get that jam nut broke loose, you can go ahead and take this out, and then you can take the tie rod off. Okay, once we have this off, what we're going to do is we're going to measure 5/8 back on this and cut this off, and then we're going to measure 1/2 inch back on this and cut 1/2 inch off of this. What we're going to do now is we're going to mark off from the center line of our tie rod end, which would be right in the center of this grease zerk. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure that out to 4 7/8 inches, which is right here. After we do that, we want to double check that from the other direction, make sure that that's 5/8, and that is pretty much dead on 5/8. So that's where our cut line is going to be, is right across here. We've got this end cut off, so the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to go ahead and move over onto the truck and measure out our inner tie rod end. We're going to measure that back and cut it. What we want to do is we want to cut 1/2 inch off of the end of this. So the easiest way to do that is to measure it back, take a piece of tape, and put a piece of tape right at 1/2 inch. And it's a good way to mark it. And that way we know we've got our 1/2 inch. Once you've got this cut off, you can take the tape off of there, take the jam nut off, and then when you spin it out over the end here, that'll help to clear the thread. This is a very important step to remember because currently this is not in the instructions to do this, but after you get this all cut, you want to make sure you put this jam nut back on, and you want to screw that jam nut down to where we put our tape for our 1/8 inch of threads. And then after we do that, we'll reattach our outer tie rod in. Once we've got this all cut off, we've got our tie rod ends back on, we'll go ahead and screw our jam nut back down. And then what we want to do is just tighten that jam nut a little bit. Now, also keep in mind that when this truck is all done, it will have to go in to have a wheel alignment done on it to make sure that everything is all correct on the front end, set up right so that it'll go down the road straight. We've got that on. We're going to go ahead and put the nut back on this and tighten this down. The next thing we're going to do, once we've got our tie rod in, all back on and in place, is we're going to put our extenders on for our brake lines. So we need to remove this retaining clip up here, and the easiest way to do that is just get something behind it and just give it a little nudge off of there, just like so. And that'll let our brake line pull through that retaining, that area where it sits in there with that retaining clip. So we'll get our new brackets and get ready to put those on. Now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to remove this bracket from our frame here, and also to get it off of our line. Rather than disconnecting this and disconnecting our line here and having to go through and bleed the brakes and all that, what we're going to do is we're just going to cut the end of this bracket off so we can slip our line out. And when you do this, be very careful that you don't nick your brake line back here or on here someplace, because then that'll make it weak there and it may leak. What I'm going to do now is that way when this cuts through I don't accidentally chop down onto that, is I'm just going to grab a pair of pliers. Now that I've got that cut a little bit, should be able just to grab a hold of this and snap it the rest of the way off, just like so. And that'll allow us to get our brake line out of there. Okay, that's off. Once we have our old bracket off, then what we're going to do is we're going to take our new supplied bracket and we're going to put it right up here on like this. Use the bolt that we took out of our factory bracket to reattach this, and then we're going to tighten that down. And then once we have that tightened down in place, then what we're going to do is we're going to very easy and gently pull this line around, and we're going to bend this factory brake line a little bit to get it at a nice angle to come through here. We're going to put this back through and then reattach our clip that we took off of our factory one. Guys, we've got our brake line bracket on. We've got our clip reinstalled to hold our line in. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach our ABS line, and our ABS wire rather. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to run it up through here and plug it back in here. And then we're going to use the original bolt here that we took out of our other bracket and one of the wire clamps that came with our kit. Put our brake line or our ABS line in there, and then we're going to reattach it with this bolt that we originally had screwed back in here. So once we've got it reattached up here, then we're going to take another one of our wire clips, put it on here, and then on the back of our steering knuckle, we're going to attach it with one of the self-tapping bolts that come in your bolt pack and flat washer, and we're going to put it right in this back section back here. The next thing we're going to do is reattach our sway bar, and what we're going to use is we're going to use our drop-down blocks, also along with these bolts that come in bolt kit 449, and we're going to attach a little Loctite to them, and we're going to put those up in here, reusing our brackets from our original sway bar where it mounted up here. We'll get this front one started. We're going to leave all this loose until we get our link pins and such back in, because that'll give us the ability to move this around. If we tighten this up, then it's going to make this really stiff and we won't be able to move it around very well to put our link pins in. So put together our link pin, which is also everything you need is found in the link pin kit. It's all inside one of the bags. So the first thing we're going to do then is we're going to take one of the washers. We're going to put the washer on to the bolt. Then we're going to take one of the rubber bushings. Now, if you guys look at this rubber bushing, you'll see that it's flat on the back side. It has a little detent that comes out on this side. That's the side we want down. And then we're going to put this through our sway bar like so. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Is we're going to take this one and we're going to put this so that the detent is up along with a flat washer, because what those do is they sit inside there like that. And then after that, we'll take our sleeve, we'll put the sleeve on, and then we'll take another flat washer, rubber bushing with the detent facing down, and then we're going to take our sway bar and we're actually going to move it up and place it into the mounting hole. And then we're going to take another bushing with the detent facing up there, flat washer, and also our self-locking nut, and attach it to the bottom. Now for right now, we're going to leave all this loose for the most part, so that way we can get the sway bar oriented back in the correct location where it's going to go. We're going to go ahead and put our rotor back on, put our brake caliper back on, and that'll pretty much just about wrap this side up. So we'll go ahead and finish up the rest of the other side and get some wheels on it and get this thing on the ground for you. And what we're going to do here, guys, is just use the same bolts that we took out originally of our factory knuckle, and we're going to just put those back in here to hold our brake caliper on. We've got everything all back together. The only thing left to do is, if you haven't done so already, tighten up your lower control arm bolts, make sure those are tight, and torque to spec. And the only thing we've got left to do here now is to tighten up our bolts on our sway bar and to tighten up our sway bar links. So we're going to go ahead and get that done, and that'll pretty much do it for this. So let's jump on that right now. Now, something to keep in mind, guys, when you're tightening this up, when we tighten it up, all we want to do is just put a little bit of a squash on these rubber bushings. We don't want to like really crank it down, just enough to make sure that it's tight and have just a little bit of squash on them. And I'll show you what I mean here. Just like so. Okay, there you go. That's all there is to it, guys. We're pretty much done with this lift at this time. So as you can see, it's a long process to install this lift, but it's not really all that difficult if you follow along this video or follow along on the instruction sheet. And so there you have it. That's how you install the Zone 6.5-inch lift kit on your truck. So until next time, guys, happy motoring. You can see here we have our Zone skid plate out of the box and get to take a really nice look at this. This is a pretty awesome thing to put on the front of your truck, especially if you've just put a lift kit on and you're looking at the underside of your truck going, we've got problems because all this stuff's exposed now and it's going to get beat up from rocks and debris. Well, this will stop that from happening and help protect that. Plus, it's very easy to install. 4 bolts to install it that are already on your truck, so you don't need to go hunting bolts, and it'll look really cool too. So let's get this onto the truck. What we're going to do then is we're going to remove these 3 bolts right here that we put in for our Zone lift kit, and that's where our new skid plate is going to attach there, and then up here where the factory one originally attached. And we're going to use the factory bolts that we took out from up here to reattach the front of that. So let's get these out first. Okay, guys, there you go. You can see how quick and simple that is to install. It's going to provide some major protection for the front of your truck, the important components. One thing you want to take a look at here, if you notice, when we installed this, we installed it over the top of this one and of our support brace. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you pull these down and put this under it, then what that's going to allow to do is anything that would normally hit this and skid off of it, could allow it to catch on this plate and potentially pull it off or damage something really bad. So if you hook it up like this, it'll just slide down this right across that plate, gone, no worries. Your truck's still in good shape and you can continue your trail ride. So there you go, guys. Until next time, happy motoring.